practicing doing case studies because you're going to have two case studies. I wrote the exam already. They're made. There are two versions, one for the morning class and one for you all. They're made. I'm going to print them today. They'll be ready to go for next Tuesday. Okay? So today we'll do urinary, urogenital, and we'll finish, and then we'll do the case study, and then anybody who needs to do the one-on-one. I think it's just one individual, my favorite student, who is going to have my undivided attention. And then everybody else can go home and have mimosas. Anybody have questions?
Just one.
Let's get started. So if we think about the anatomical structures of the urinary tract, it's the kidneys, it is the ureters, and the bladder, and the urethra, and then all of those things can be infected. Right? So we're going to be talking about urinary tract infection in just a minute. The second thing is we look at the reproductive structures of a male. All of the reproductive structures of a male can be infected. The penis, the testes, the seminal vesicles, the vas, the prostate, right? And then for females, all of the structures can be infected, right? So now you're looking at the ovaries, the fallopian tubes, the vagina, the cervix, and the uterus, right? And so it's pretty important to think about that. There is a lot of protection in the urogenital area. So it's the formation of IgA, it's lysozyme formation. It is the lining of the vaginal cavity with normal inhabitants. So this is both bacteria and yeast. And the opening of the urethra itself is highly colonized, right? So there's a lot of microbial growth at the opening of the urethra. That's because urine is a very good growth medium. It'll grow just about everything. And if you don't believe me, urinate at your toilet at home and just leave it there for a day and see what happens.
There's a film in the toilet.
Yeah. So sometimes it'll start to stink, it'll start to get cloudy, and then there might be a pseudofilm that actually grows on the surface. These are all the organisms attaching themselves by fimbria. That's pretty cool. But it's stinky. And once they form, if you let it sit there too long, the proteins will adhere to the toilet and it'll be hard to get off. It's different than like water lining because of scale. Right? This is actual protein. Right? Fabuloso works really good. Fabuloso will take it right out. Right? And so that's pretty interesting. I am not going to cover every single slide. We're going to go through the most important parts because I know you're tired. I can tell by looking at your eyes that some of you just had enough of me already.
Not you. No, it's not a personal thing.
I'm taking it kind of personal. Okay?
Don't take it personal.
That's just the way it
Yeah,
is.
this is it. It's not you.
It's our
It's
own
us.
So let's talk about urinary tract infections first, right? So if we look at the symptomology, first of all, fever. But if you have lower abdominal pain, right, it's mostly going to be the bladder that's infected. Now the urethra can be affected, and that provides another problem. But it's really the bladder that causes that lower abdominal pain, right? And then the kidneys. With the kidneys, you'll have back pain, you'll have left flank, you'll have flank pain, right? And so it's interesting to think about where these things are located and how you can have pain radiating from the actual structures that are being infected. When the kidneys get involved, it's much more serious, so we treat it much more aggressively. Right? Now that doesn't mean we don't treat cystitis or bladder infections aggressively. That just means that the kidneys, if they continue to malfunction, it can lead to all kinds of different problems, and so we treat them fairly aggressively. So with cystitis, which is the infection of the bladder, there's a sudden onset of pain in the pubic area, frequent urges to urinate, even if you don't produce any urine. The bladder might be completely empty, but you have this urgency to want to go urinate. There can be pain that's associated with urination, what we call dysuria, right? You can have cloudy urine. It can be kind of tingy orange or red because of the blood in it. Sometimes the blood in the urine you cannot appreciate it by just looking at it. You have to look at it microscopically, or you can do a urine dipstick. The dipsticks are pretty good at figuring out whether there's blood or anything in there. And you can buy those things, you can buy 100 of them for like $19. And they'll last you for a good time. You don't even have to refrigerate them. But it's a good way to do a real spot check on how your kidney function is working. I do all the time, because I have my issue with my kidneys. I buy those things and I check my urine about every Sunday. That's when I try to do it.
Hey, Proby,
Yeah.
I heard that for UTI, if it's not treated, it can cause, like, make you delusional, especially in older people.
Agreed. So one of the things with
Happened to my
with
grandma.
older people, especially people who are experiencing dementia, if you're taking care of somebody and they're a nice grandma all the time, oh hello there sweetheart, how are you? They act like that all the time, and then you walk in one day and they're cussing at you and being mean to you, or not allowing you to handle them at all, or
Mine kept telling me a train was coming. I was like,
yeah. So, or they're just really, really different than what they normally. The first thing you should consider is a urinary tract infection. They cannot tell you they are having pain.
but
But
how
they
does that
act
happen?
Well, lots of different ways. So if you think about individuals who are incontinent, right?
Okay.
They might urinate within their briefs, and then if they sit there for a little while in urine, then that can actually back up in the urethra and go up into the bladder, and so you can have that kind of
Split.
The other thing that happens is ladies, when you were being trained, you were always taught to wipe from front to back. That's so that you wouldn't contaminate the opening of the urethra with feces, right? But if you are an individual who is bedridden or do not have the ability to go to the bathroom, right, you're gonna soil your briefs, and sometimes that can be that can contaminate the urethra, and so that's how easy it can be to do that. The other thing that causes problems, especially in the elderly, is when they get catheterized and you don't irrigate the catheter well enough over a period of time, then the catheter should not be in there forever.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have that, then you could also have a bladder infection because of the catheter. And you all are going to do a lot of not if you're a dental hygienist, but if you're going to be a nurse, you're going to do a lot of catheterizations. That's just you're going to be good at it, okay? And that's important to think about how that works. So when we talk about catheters here, we're not talking about venous catheters or cannulas, or we're not talking about intra-aortic catheters. We're talking about Foley's, right? We're talking about Foley catheters, right? The ones that go into the urethra, into the bladder, okay? So if we think about that, cranberries are protective because of the proanthocyanidins that are produced in the cranberries. So a good part of good urinary health would be for everyone to drink cranberry juice. And I'm not talking about cranberry drink. I'm talking about cranberry juice. So it is very tart, and if you don't like that, you can buy the ASO standards or some of the other products that have the HEB label on it that essentially have cranberry extract in it. And they will not allow for the bacteria to attach to those tissues of the bladder, which is pretty good.
Why do you say not a supplement?
What's that?
Why does it say not a supplement?
Because you don't get enough of the liquid, you don't get enough of the exposure to it, right? Okay, so if we think about that, there are lots of different antibiotics. I'm not gonna ask you about antibiotics for these organisms. Every one of them is different. You have to do a culture and sensitivity. However, if my patient comes to me and I have the ability to help them, I am not gonna let a patient leave that particular office without some relief. So I would prefer to give an injection, but most people don't want an injection. So the drug of choice that I'm going to use for a urinary tract infection is nitrofurantoin, right? But there are some resistant organisms to it, so we have to get a culture and sensitivity, right? And so once you get the culture and sensitivity, ever had a problem where they called you and said, we're gonna have to change your antibiotic because the one we gave you isn't gonna work, and that's what happens is they do a culture and sensitivity. They figure out what the organism is, they figure out what the antibiotics that will kill it, what are the best choices. And then when they are giving you something that's not gonna work, they will actually change your antibiotic for you. Any questions? There'll be a question on the exam 5 that's going to ask, what is the most common cause of urinary tract infections? And that answer to that question is E. coli. By far. E. coli is the most common cause of urinary tract infections. You can see there are other organisms like Staphylococcus saprophyticus and Proteus mirabilis. I'm going to tell you right now that almost all gram-negative rods can cause urinary tract infections. So you can't be surprised if you see a Klebsiella, an Enterobacter, a Proteus, or something else like that. Salmonella, probably not. Right? What were you doing if you got salmonella in the urinary tract? No. But it's pretty important. Is this yours?
No, it's me.
Oh, okay, it has her name on it.
Oh yeah, I got a Starbucks this morning.
Oh, okay, that's really nice. I thought maybe you were incognito and you were just using the self-service. Because I was like, okay.
I was like, how do I have a Starbucks this morning?
Anybody have any questions? I didn't mean to touch it or anything weird like that. Okay, so, let me pull it up. He's gonna drink it. He's been eyeing it for a while. Yes. Okay. Anybody have any questions about urinary tract infections? There's another, if we think about this, so this is uncomplicated and complicated. This is out of Nature Reviews. And so you can see that this is the urinary tract infection for healthy individuals. He just got unlucky, right, for whatever reason. But you can see urinary pathogenic E. coli, that's causing 75% of the infections. Therefore, that's going to be the answer on the exam. 6% of them Klebsiella pneumoniae, 6% of them Staphylococcus saprophyticus, 5% of them Enterococcus, about 3% of them Group B Streptococcus, Streptococcus agalacti, and then you have Proteus and Pseudomonas and Staph aureus and Candida. Alright, so the risk factors here are going to be females because of 2 reasons. The shorter distance from the open urethra to the anus, and the other thing is it's just a shorter urethra. And so those allow for females to get more urinary tract infections. Very common during pregnancy. Okay?
Should we still know like the rest of them and like the percentages?
No.
Just E. coli.
Just E. coli. But I'm showing you the stats because it's important.
Yeah.
Because y'all are going to be working, you're going to see a lot of this. For complicated, these are individuals who have problems, right? So that can be indwelling catheters, those are Foley's, you're immunosuppressed. You have urinary tract abnormalities, or you've had a lot of exposure to antibiotics. E. coli still is a major player, but now Klebsiella pneumoniae and Enterococcus play a larger role. And also, Candida plays a larger role. Right? So, Candida because of the immunosuppression. Okay? Any questions? Okay. I'd like to talk about leptospharia, not because you're going to get a urinary tract infection, but because it's actually carried by a lot of other animals. And a lot of other animals are going to come into your backyard and they might urinate on your fruits and vegetables, right? Yeah.
Dogs.
Not dogs. I'm talking mostly rats and possums and skunk and coons and those guys, okay? Which are going to be found in these things, right? So lots of, like cats get a vaccine for leptospharia, right? And some dogs do also. But for the most part, it's going to be those wild animals. I'm going to tell you, when I was first starting at college working as an undergrad, I had 3 jobs. I had to have 3 jobs in order to support my way through college. So one of my jobs was I was an overnight stocker at a grocery store. And I was responsible for aisles 3 and 4, which are health and beauty aids. Don't ask me why they gave me that. Because I could care less about that stuff. But I got to know a lot of that, right? And then this aisle 4 was the dog and the cat food aisle, which I like to be on a lot. Mostly because of all the Clostridia I saw in the cans. And so it was interesting to me. But what I will tell you is, organisms like rats, and just so you know, all grocery stores have rats. You can't get away from it. If you walk around HEB, right, you'll see these black boxes all around HEB. Don't be giving me faces like that, right? But you'll see those are rat traps. You can't get away from not having vermin in a grocery store. There's too much food in it. They're attracted to it. So when I was at a grocery store, sometimes we would stay late at night to do inventory. And those things would come out and they would be running all over the store. Amazing. The other thing I learned is a lot of times they like to urinate on the tops of the soda cans
Oh yeah,
Oh
I've
my
read
God.
about. I know.
because they're attracted to the overspill. It has a lot of sugar in it, and they will sit there and they will lick up the overspill, but they'll urinate while they're there. Now, this is true because when I would finish my job of 3 and 4, they would say go and stock the sodas, and I'd go there and stock them. And sometimes I'd pick up the 6-pack and I have all this slime. And what is this stuff? It was rat urine. Right. And so one time we were having a little party afterwards, and I opened up a soda and I drank it, and it was like this real bittery taste on it. I drank a little bit of excreta from probably a mouse or a rat or something like that. I do not drink out of a bottle, out of the can anymore. If I do, I pour it into a cup and then drink it out of there. Bottles with a bottle top on it are not a problem. It is the flat surface of the can that's a problem.
Yeah, I know. I hear my aunt would always be like, rinse it.
I
wash
know.
it, always wash it.
Then you can't help it.
So for plants, whenever they peel it, you just need to like rinse the fruit juice. It won't affect the plant. Okay, cool.
And I would, like, unless they have very, like, some animals, like deer, can urinate all at once on your grass, and then you'll notice the grass is dying right there, and that's because there's so much nitrogen in there that it burns the grass. Right? But it's pretty rare for that to happen. Right? And it's pretty interesting to think about. Now, the problem isn't really getting the infectious agent here, but coming in contact with it so it can get in the body. And a lot of times that's through actually being in the water after a big rainstorm, right?
That's why you say to wait
Yeah.
a few days.
There's just a lot of things that can actually, leptospira is one of those, and it can cause eye infections and skin infections, folliculitis, all kinds of different things. Here you can see a mouse hanging over kind of a little stream or whatever, and it's just urinating right then and there. Right? And so that's just the way they are. Animals don't think about, oh, well, this is not very sanitary, I'm just not gonna do it here, I'm gonna go into the woods and take care of business, then I'll come back. They don't think like that. And so it's important to think about. Right. Questions about leptospira. Alright. Prostatitis. Nobody in here needs to worry about it. But I do want to mention it because my generation had a lot of trouble with infertility. My generation was the generation that had the most problem with infertility. And that's because we picked up infections and we just didn't get them treated. That led to pelvic inflammatory disease, mostly in females, but in males it could lead to damage of the prostate and other structures, which then would lead to low sperm count, right? So, a lot of times it was just not the female that was the problem, it was the male that was the problem when you tried to have children. They had low sperm count, and so for lots of different reasons, right? But so, one of those things can happen is that your prostate becomes enlarged. Now, as a young person, your prostate should never be enlarged. It's not until you're in your late 40s, early 50s that you start to see this problem. But there's some things you can take to actually alleviate that, right? One of them is saw palmetto and fleecium, and if you take that, this other HEB, your piping is going to work a lot better. Why are you Why are you
Because
laughing?
you know everything sells at HEB.
Oh, they do. I love HEB. It's my favorite store. I go there at least 3 times or 4 times a week.
A day.
And sometimes I walk in just to walk in and see what goes on. I like to go to the reduced area because I find a lot of really good deals in the reduced area. Right. Wednesday is my HEB's day to put the reduced meat out. That's when I have Wednesday evenings. Right? Other HEBs just happen different days, but that is when it happens for me. Right. And so it's important for us to think about this. And I know none of you have a prostate, and that's okay. Right? But you should still know this because some of you are going to have boys when you have children. And so I personally think, because I compare my brother and me to my sister, I personally think the boys are easy to deal with. However, they get into more trouble. Right? There's a difference between vaginitis and vaginosis, and I'm using those terms as overall kind of places to put diseases in, but it can be ballantitis or ballantosis. Ballantitis or ballantosis is the infection of the penis or the overgrowth of organisms on the penis. And those are going to happen with 2 organisms. Mostly it's going to be Candida yeast, or it's going to be Gardnerella. One of those 2 things, right? So if we think about this, if we think about yeast infections, right, it's simply going to be Candida and Candida albicans, right? So if I ask you on an exam what's the most common cause of vaginitis, then it's going to be Candida. It's going to be a fungus. Right? Vaginitis means that there's inflammation associated with the tissues because they're infected. Vaginosis just means there's overgrowth, and that doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be any other problem, other than there's going to be a lot of growth, and there can be some symptomology with that. And the symptomology is going to be an exudate that is going to be a lot of times kind of unpleasant. Right? So almost every single individual who has a discharge is going to get it checked out, right? But the problem is some of the discharges are very different. Some of them have pus in them. Some of them have an odor associated with them. And those are when we should really go get checked out, right? I mean, I think you all are going to know that that's not a normal thing, right? It's different than the mucosal secretions that you see throughout your cycle, right? Sometimes the mucosal becomes a little, the mucus becomes a little thicker, right? But that's different than an exudate that actually is going to come out of the vaginal area and be very different. You're going to appreciate that very easily, right? And so it's easy to think about. With Gardnerella is associated with vaginosis. It is the overgrowth of the organism within the vagina itself, right? It can be sexually transmitted, but it is not categorized as a sexually transmitted infection. So if you have a 14 or 15-year-old daughter who has BV, do not jump to conclusions that they have been sexually active. You can pick this up lots of different ways, okay? And that's important to think about that. It does have a very fishy-like odor that you can appreciate, right, from the...
Wait, how do you pick it up? You said not bisexual, but what was the other way?
It can be contact with fomites. It can be sharing articles of clothing, right? Yeah. It can be that you go into a creek and the creek's water is not moving, but you go into it anyway, right? So remember, Provi's rules of water, if the water's not moving, stay the hell out of it. Don't go in it. There's lots of things that can cause problems. Okay? So some of the other organisms beside Gardnerella vaginalis or Mobiloncus, that sounds very Egyptian to me, and Mobiloncus, right? But it's not. And mycoplasma. There have been kind of thoughts about kind of putting these organisms together. You can't put the mycoplasma with the other guys. It doesn't have a cell wall, so it's very different. But Mobiloncus maybe. So we'll see how that comes to be. A lot of times people just start having exudate and immediately think that they have a yeast infection and they go get an over-the-counter suppository or over-the-counter kind of gel that you can put into the vagina. If it's not yeast, it's just going to exacerbate the problem. because the yeasts are not gonna be affected by something that's gonna be antibacterial. Right? And so you have to be real careful. So I do wanna tell you, and probably this morning there were several young ladies who didn't even know what douching was, which is a good thing. Douching should never be done on a weekly basis, right? You should only douche if it's medically necessary, right?
Because it
What
dries
is it?
out that
Huh?
area.
What is
Douching. So okay, that's good. You never had to do it. That's
Yeah.
a good thing.
I think it's like I know
It's
what
a
it is, but
spray.
it's like
Or
a
it's
bag
sweet.
spray that goes up in the.
Yeah.
It's
They can
supposed
dry
to
your
cleanse the
vagina out.
area.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh.
But they say it's not good for you at all. Like it should have never been a
It's
thing.
not good for you.
Especially now they have scented ones, which
Yeah,
is even
no.
worse.
That's the worst.
It should not be occurring. It disrupts the normal inhabitants of the vagina, which are protective. So I can tell you, when in the late 80s, early 90s, when I was the overnight stocker for the grocery store in the health and beauty aisles, I could not keep Summer's Eve in stock. I would sell out, and I would buy so much of that stuff. I had a whole area. My manager got mad at me because I had so much of it. I'm like, but I sell a lot of this. And by the way, I didn't get any bonuses for selling all this stuff. Alright, but I would sell out of it all the time. There'd be ladies who'd come in and buy, like, do you have 3 cases of this? I'm like, yes. And they bought 3 cases of it. They were doing it way too much. Right?
But do you think Summer Eve is good, or are you saying it's?
It should not happen. The normal cleansing of the body should be enough for you all to take care of your body.
Mm-hmm.
If there's something happening and you get medically looked upon, evaluated, and they say maybe you should have a douche or do it one time or whatever, then fine. But it should not happen. It just kind of disrupts everything. Right? And so you shouldn't be doing that. The other thing is, kind of a trend these days is to have multiple partners. Yeah. And so, yeah, what's happening? And so it's really interesting. After COVID, I guess 1 year of not seeing anybody made people very amorous, and so they started doing all kinds of stuff, right? But the other thing that's really interesting to me, and I don't know if you see this, but the young men in your age group stay home and watch and do video games.
Mm-hmm.
How are they ever gonna date you all if they're at home watching video or playing video games? I don't get it.
I know.
Yeah. Ladies, I guess you have to go where they're at. You need to learn how to play video games, right? Because it's hard to meet. The other thing that is really interesting to me is how much relationships really start through online. It's very interesting to me how that happens. But evidently it happens. And I've known people who've been married several years and you met online.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You met online?
I met online.
It's pretty interesting to think about. This is the exudate that's coming out. This is the cervix, and you can see it, right? It's got a very fishy odor. Some of my colleagues would say it's got a fishy odor BV, and they would diagnose it right away. I'm like, that's not enough for me. I have to look at it under a microscope. Because under a microscope, this is pelvic inflammatory disease. You see the ovary is completely necrotic, right? But under the microscope, you can see these things. You can see that the bacteria are just attached through fimbriae to the epithelial cells, and these are called clue cells. This is a normal epithelial cell. You can see the nucleus. Here's one that's completely covered by Gardnerella. Here's a gram stain of one of them, right? This is a clue cell. This is a normal one. You can see there's not very many bacteria on it. And then this is kind of an artist kind of saying, hey, these are clue cells and these are normal, right? But the clue cells are a giveaway. If you see these things, then you essentially need to get treated by or for bacterial vaginosis, and the treatment is very easy. It's just metronidazole. You can use clindamycin, but that's like a big gun. I would not use clindamycin unless it's necessary. Metronidazole will take care of business. Any questions about Gardnerella? So if I ask on the examining pool, what is the etiology of bacterial vaginosis, the answer is Gardnerella. Okay? So here, if we look at, these are really great images that help you to appreciate what's actually being, what is symptomatic. And so here, if we're looking into the vagina and look at the cervix, you can see that you have kind of this kind of creamy discharge associated with the cervix. That's indicative of candida. Here you can see it's puretic, it's got a fishy odor. That's Gardnerella. And the organism we haven't talked about yet, but we will in just a second, is Trichomonas. And so here you can see this grayish kind of discharge. Greenish grayish discharge. It looks more yellow to me than anything. But you can see that there are these little bitty lesions on the cervix. That's called strawberry cervix. It's an indication of having an infection by Trichomonas. Okay? And so let's go there. So we're going to talk about sexually transmitted infections now. I've divided them up into 3 different categories. Discharge diseases, those infectious agents that give off a discharge. Those that form ulcers, and those that form warts or wart-like processes. And so let's start with Trichomonas, right? Trichomonas is an anaerobic protozoan, and it causes asymptomatic infections in 50% of the people that are infected by it, right? Some people experience long-term negative effects by it, pelvic inflammatory disease, right? And so it can be truly problematic. The World Health Organization, the last time I checked, said there are about 80 million cases worldwide. And if we just look at North America, about 5 to 8 million cases. We just take the lower end of that, 5 million, and we say half of them are asymptomatic. In North America, in the United States and Canada, there are 2.5 million people walking around with trichomonas and have no symptoms. And so, to me, you have to be careful with what you're doing. And so it's important to think about that. This is the discharge. It's puretic. It's got pus in it. It's a little bit frothier. And so it can cause cervicitis and inflammation of the cervix. It can cause urethritis. It can cause vaginitis. Right? The males typically will have pain when they urinate, when they have this problem. Okay? The piping in the females is different. Okay? So diagnosis, you can look at this microscopically, you can stain it, but a lot of times you can just grab it and you can see the little organisms swimming around. They're easy to pick up, right? And so all I need is just a little bit of sample from it. I can take a look at it and I can tell you what's going on, okay? You can stain it if you have a hard time seeing it, but most of the time you don't have a hard time seeing it. It can be treated with metronidazole, right? We know that from research, we know that individuals who have an infection of trichomonas are likely to have HIV also. So if you get diagnosed with trichomoniasis, you should be tested for HIV. That doesn't mean you're going to have HIV. That just means we see a correlation. Okay? And the other correlation we see is that women who are infected with trichomonas tend to deliver a premature infant that is a low birth weight because it interferes with the take of nutrients during gestational development. That doesn't mean there's going to be anything wrong with the baby once it's born, but that just means that we can expect there to be low birth weight infants. Okay? So, any questions about Candida albicans, Gardnerella, or trichomonas? Okay. Let's talk about gonorrhea. Gonorrhea is on the rise and it's drug resistant, right? And so it typically tends to infect the superficial layers of the tissues it infects, right? And so you can see that the neutrophils show up very quickly, and then here you can see this discharge coming out of the penis itself. The discharge will come out of the vagina also. But here you can see the neutrophils show up and you have gram-negative diplocoxy, and it can infect every single part of the urogenital system, although it typically is superficial. Right? And so if we think about that for a moment, In females, if the vagina is infected and the baby comes out of the birth canal, then the baby can actually acquire the infectious agent from coming out of the birth canal. We want to be sure that we check out as part of a prenatal screen, looking for things like chlamydia and gonorrhea and group B strep. Those are the ones we look for typically. We can look for others, herpes and things like that, right? But there's not much we can do for herpes. We can do things for the bacteria, but for the viruses, it's just not possible. Right? And so it's important to think about this. This is an infection of the baby by gonorrhea, which can lead to all kinds of problems, including blindness. Okay? Chlamydia is the great mimicker, and it is, in my opinion, the most prevalent of all sexually transmitted infections. I have a colleague who might be retired now, who's in San Antonio, and he'll tell you that trichomonas is the number one. And this morning, a student looked it up, and sure enough, in North America, I think, there are more cases of trichomonas than there are chlamydia, which is surprising to me, because when I was in clinical practice, I almost never saw trichomonas. Maybe one case every 2 or 3 months. But chlamydia was everywhere. Chlamydia, even when I was in college, like I was having really bad hay fever to Cedar, and I went to get a shot of Aristocord to help me with inflammation, and they were going to give me the shot, but then they said, we'd like to test you for chlamydia. I'm like, but I'm here for allergies. They said, well, what we know is that 50% of all the students who come to the infirmary have chlamydia, and so we want to be sure that we're checking for them, and if we check you and you test positive, we'll treat you for free. I'm like, okay, go ahead and do it. I tested negative, but it was good to get tested. Right?
How do you tell the difference?
Between?
Yeah, the chlamydia and gonorrhea. Because it's so close.
You have to do a workup. You have to look at the actual organism and do. Well, nowadays you can do molecular tests, right? We have a gene probe that we can take a little bit of sample, and we can put it into our instrument, and it will tell you if you have chlamydia, or you have gonorrhea, or you have herpes. It could look for all of those things.
But chlamydia, you don't have the discharge, right? Like you do the.
You do have a
You do.
discharge.
Oh, you do. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So if we think about it, the one thing about chlamydia is it doesn't have the ability to actually produce its own ATP. So it has to steal the ATP from the cells is infected. And that's pretty interesting to think about how that works. If we look at the epidemiology, you can see that the southern states are more likely to have individuals where the rates are higher than everywhere else in the except for Alaska. What is going on in Alaska?
They're bored. They can't go outside as much.
And in Alaska, are there more males or more females?
Males.
More males, like 4 times as many males as females. So the ladies can pick their guy if they want. But you can look it up and find out that I'm not telling you a lie. There's a famous calendar that's titled Alaska. In Alaska, the goods are, I forget how it says, the odds are good, but the goods are odd. Are you with me? So what that's basically saying is the guys in Alaska are a little bit weird, but there's a lot of them. Take your pick. Are you with me? I had a student one time who moved here to Texas from Alaska, and she said in Alaska she couldn't get a date, even though because she was very picky and the guys were weird, and nobody would ask her out. But when she came here, the first week she was here, she got asked out by 3 different guys. And by the way, she ended up dating one of my students. And so I don't know if it will go on. I gotta catch up with them. I don't know. The epidemiology also will show you that you can see chlamydia in very young people because young teenagers are very curious, especially boys. They're like, wow, oh boy, let's try this. But then you can see when you get into high school, you start to see the cases go up. And the cases are higher in female than they are in males. Why is that? Because females are likely to go get checked out, males are not.
So there could be more males, we just don't know.
Probably there are. The other thing is males tend to be more promiscuous. Yeah. So if you get with one promiscuous males and they're dating several different ladies, then you know it'd be a problem.
And he's not getting checked.
Just spreading it.
And so that happens in college also, you know. But the males, you know, they tend to go get checked out because, you know. And then you get a little bit more, you graduate, you get a little bit more responsibility, and then you get married, and then your life becomes very, very normalized, right? It's unlikely that you're going to do that. It's an interesting thing then. My chart doesn't go up, but we're seeing a spike in 55 and older. Why?
Cause y'all.
You are. What's going on at 55 and older?
The ladies end up leaving the men because they
Divorce rate.
That's the problem.
Viagra.
That's the thing.
Y'all have to get
All-
that stuff.
Yeah, Viagra is like helping people, right? And I never really thought about this except my aunt, when she was alive, I would go to visit her every 2 weeks and she would have a list of things for me to do for her, right? Please fix this and do whatever. And then she would have a list of things to do for her neighbors. Are you with me? And so my aunt loved me so much. Everywhere I went, I was going to HEB before she wanted to go, right? I would go and get her clothes out of the laundromat and she would want to go. And then I would go and like pick up her mail and she would like walk with me. And then like I noticed that there was this guy sitting there and he would go, "Hello, Eva."
Oh.
And she was like, And I said, "It looks like that guy wants to talk to you." He's a bad man. I'm like, "What do you mean the bad man?" "He's got a lot of girlfriends." I'm like, "Oh." And I just kind of blew it off. But then, you know, she had a list of go help her neighbors. And I went to the first lady and she was making cookies. I'm like, "Oh, you're making cookies? Oh, yeah, you can have one, but only one because they're for my boyfriend, Ralph, and he's coming over later." And then I go to the next and she's making like lunch. I'm like, "What's going on?" She goes, "I'm making enchiladas for Ralph. He's coming over for lunch." I'm like,
Little Ralph.
and then I went back to my aunt and I said, "Do you know a guy named Ralph?" "That's that man who was talking to me earlier." I'm like, "He's a bad man." With me?
Ralph been
Ralph
around.
was making his rounds. Here you can see, looking into the vagina, you can see a healthy cervix. This is one that's completely infected with chlamydia. To me, it is the most prevalent of all sexually transmitted infections. Provi's rule is if it doesn't look good or smell good, stay the hell away from it. Okay? So let's move over to ulcer infections, and so we're going to start with syphilis. So syphilis is on the rise again. It was under control for a long time, but now it's on the rise again. And the principal symptom of having syphilis is you develop a chancre after about a few days of actually being exposed to it. A chancre is an ulcer that can be on the genitalia, and so you can see this. Now this will heal in a few weeks, but if you don't get it treated, then the organism is systemic. And once it becomes systemic, then it can cause lots of problems. It can cause all your hair to fall out, right? It will become neurological, and it will cause all kinds of problems. And if you still don't get it treated, like, who's not going to go to the physician if you look like this, right?
Or at the beginning stage.
Well, that's true. Although I will tell you, oh my God, when we were in college, I lived with 3 other guys because we were poor, and we had one guy who moved in with us. He was very affluent, right? He was very wealthy. Well, he was extremely good looking. He had a lot of girlfriends. And like Saturday mornings, "Hey man, can you look at this?" I'm like, "I don't want to see it." But he would show me anyway. He goes, "Is this an ingrown hair?" I'm like, "That is not an ingrown hair. You need to go get it checked." Right?
At least he'd ask you.
Well, I don't know why he would pick on me, but you know.
Because you're the microbiologist.
Yeah, but I wasn't a doctor, right? So, but anyway. And in the tertiary state, in the very, very latent states when it's almost so much, even if you were to treat it and cure yourself of it, there's a lot of damage involved. You develop these gumata. These are huge lesions that show up on the body.
I just cannot believe people.
Gumata is one, guma is several. And it can happen any place in the body.
My thing, Ruby, is how do people let this get so far? Like.
So we have a colleague, you have a colleague in the morning class who works in a sexual health unit for Travis County. And they will tell you that they see guma. And I'm really surprised that we see guma. But that just means you just let it go too far. Right?
And then they still sometimes start spreading it to others.
And it's only transmitted
Girl.
sexual.
If you engage with somebody who has a guma,
Okay,
it's
yeah.
on you, okay? I mean, if you look at that and you go, oh, hell no, let me go do something else.
Just to make sure this is sexually transmitted.
Especially if their teeth look like that, nobody's gonna touch them.
Except for another
Yeah,
Guma.
that's my go-to.
And teeth are very important.
Okay, so there can be problems with congenital syphilis. So this is syphilis that it goes across the placenta and then can cause problems with the developing kiddo. Hutchinson's teeth, so you can see they're bifurcated, so they have points at the end.
Mm-hmm.
That I don't know. I think people do this now for just kind of style. You have you heard that they're like filing down their teeth to make them look like they have
What is it, Northwest, I think?
But they have what? Vampire?
like vampire fangs? Yeah, that's terrible. Yeah, but also you can develop saber chins, and so here you can see, or Clutton's joints. You know, so they have lots of different problems. So one of them is this kind of saddle nose deformity. Now this can happen because you broke your nose, but also it can happen if you've had congenital syphilis. Right? It
Can they-
develops critical periods of development for the
And
developing
is
fetus.
it fixable or curable when you're a kid and you get it?
Congenitally, yes, it can lead to all kinds of problems developmentally, including cognitive dysfunction.
Oh, so it's not
But-
curable.
But if the baby's born and you treat them right away, less likely that there's going to be any problems. Sometimes the problems already happen because of the disruption of development. Herpes does the same thing, except herpes is much more destructive, which we're going to talk about that in a minute. This is chancroid. So chancroid looks like syphilis, except is a different organism. Where syphilis is a gram-negative spirillum, chancroid is a gram-negative rod. But you can see that it causes these lesions. Those are painful, by the way. And so it's a problem. And then herpes. Herpes can infect every single tissue of the body. It's not just the genitalia and it's not just the pubic pylori. Here you have a baby who had in utero herpes. A lot of times the babies are born, but they're born still. They're not alive. It's problematic.
I've seen a few.
To me, it's a lot worse than Zika. Although we pay a lot more attention to Zika than we do herpes. Right? And so it is a problem. Any questions about syphilis, chancroid, or herpes? So now wart diseases, which a lot of times are even worse because they look awful. So this is human papillomavirus, and so here you can see you have human papillomavirus causing cancer or wart-like projections in the mouth, but also in the anal area, on the penis itself, right? All different places, right? And even on the anus itself, or the opening of the vagina. So these are venereal warts, but maybe even cancer, right? And so it's problematic, okay? And so it's a problem. And so you can see why I'm such a big proponent of getting
Vaccines.
a vaccine against human papillomavirus. It's not required by nurses, by the nursing program, right? But you should get it. They won't give it to anybody who's like 23 or older, I think,
They
nowadays.
start young.
Like 13 or something like that.
Well, I think I was 16 before
Yeah.
going.
Because once you get to 21 or 20, you've already been exposed to it. Right? Not every single strain of human papillomavirus is going to cause cervical cancer. Right? But to the strains that you do come in contact with that can, Gardasil or the vaccine for it can really help you. Okay? If we can save just one person from developing cervical, buccal, or anal cancer from human papillomavirus, the whole program is worth it. This is molluscum contagiosum. It's also a virus. It doesn't have to be sexually transmitted. A lot of times we see it in kiddos. And if you were to pop one of these pustules, the inside of the pustule is very grainy. It's like sand, right? And so it's pretty interesting to think about this. Sometimes you get it one time and then never again. Sometimes you get it and it just pops up periodically throughout your entire life. Okay? Any questions about human papillomavirus or molluscum contagiosum? We're almost done. I want to just mention again HIV and AIDS so that you understand. There might be a question or two about HIV and AIDS. But remember, people don't die of AIDS. They die of some other infectious agent that typically doesn't affect us, but because we're immunocompromised, we will get infections of toxoplasmosis or pedicillosis or aspergillosis or pneumocystis jirovecii, all these different things, right? And so it's important to think about that. The two demographics that we see the highest concentration of new cases of being HIV positive are the Black males and the Hispanic or Latino males, although we're seeing it more in Latino females, right? Ladies, just because some guy is very romantic and says, oh yes, mi amor, yo te quiero con todo mi corazón, do not fall for it.
Why do you think that? Why do you think it's mainly like African Americans and Hispanics?
I think it's because
They're flirts.
we haven't. I think it's because we haven't done a good job of educating them.
Yeah.
Okay. So the other thing that I want to give kudos to is Ruth Coker Burks in the late 80s. Yeah, in the late 80s. You know, y'all weren't even born yet. But when AIDS started to be a problem, like lots of people wouldn't even, like they would quit their jobs instead of help to treat AIDS patients, right? Going against Hippocratic oath completely. You're going to take an oath as a nurse also. It's going to be a different oath, but it's going to simply mean that you're going to help all patients. You don't get to say, I'm not helping you, right? But there were people that were doing that. And not only that, but people who died of AIDS, they would cremate them and then they didn't know what to do with the ashes, right? And so people were trying to get them buried in the cemetery and they wouldn't let them. So this lady had a plot of land in Arkansas and she opened up that plot of land for people to come. She got permits and she opened up that plot of land for people to come and bury their loved ones who died of AIDS. And so, you know, it's about, people should be allowed to live with dignity and die with dignity. So the thing you need to show your patients more than anything is compassion. That's the thing that's missing the most. Right? Don't call the person the burn patient, or don't call them the patient in room 309. Call them by their name.
My
Okay?
dad said when AIDS had a breakout back then, people didn't know how it was
Oh
transmitted
yeah,
at the
they
time.
thought you could get it from being in the same room.
Airborne. So people were scared to roll their windows
Oh,
down
yeah.
and
Crazy stuff, right? Yeah, crazy stuff. So we leave, as we start to finish this lecture, we leave with talking about Group B, Streptococcus agalacti, because this should be part of a routine prenatal check to see if it is within the mother's vagina. And if it is, it needs to be treated. Because if the baby is born through the birth canal, they can pick up this infectious agent. It could cause blood infections, pneumonia, and meningitis, and all kinds of different things. It is important, I think, that if the babies can be born through the birth canal, that they get born through the birth canal. Because not only do they get life, but they get colonized by the mother's organisms that are in her vagina, which help protect the baby. When people are born by cesarean, and I think that cesarean are way overdone, but if people are born by cesarean, the first people who touch them, the nurses and the physicians, are the ones that provide the organisms that colonize the baby. And those are going to be all environmental organisms. They're going to be the organisms that are in the environment. They're going to be the micrococci and the bacilli and all the bacillus, and they're going to colonize. And the baby's not going to be as well protected. There are papers written about this. Okay? And so it's important for us to think
Wait,
about
so
that.
what if, like a pregnant woman has it?
That's what.
Group thing?
Oh, they get treated. Amoxicillin will knock it out. It's not a problem. Yeah. Okay. So I do have to say there have been several outbreaks in West Texas Crane High School. There were over 300 cases of chlamydia. In the high school. 300 cases. They were some busy kids. Are you with me?
Where is this at?
In West Texas. You can look it up.
Make sure I don't go there.
Well,
20 cases? Among its 300.
20 confirmed cases. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. But there were more than that. There were like a lot of cases, right? But still, 20 out of 300, that's a lot.
For high school?
Yeah, for high school, just saying.
Okay, there's sex in high school.
I know, but
Okay,
they're kids.
they're curious and they're gonna have sex.
Anywhere.
Oh,
Even
yes.
in the stairwell.
Can you turn that off for a minute? Some of the videos I will show there are very, very sad because they involve animals that have, I think, rabies, and they've lost control of what they can do. So I won't tell you all. I'm going to show you these videos, and if you want to leave the room at that time, you can. So on Thursday when we show up, we will have our last lecture on the nervous system. You all are going to do the GI on your own. And then we will have a review for exam 5, which will be next Tuesday. Okay? Then after that, we can all walk over to the symposium and you can get 5 extra points if you want. Putting it in.
I won't be here, I wanted to be there.
You have a trip wherever you're going.
What if we zoom in?
Rachel?
What's that?
What if we zoom in?
No, there's no zooming in.
Oh my gosh.
There's no zooming into the symposium. Okay? Okay. Anybody have any questions? So, yeah?
Can you go over, because I don't think I wrote it down, how like the physics exam is going to be structured?
Yeah, I've
'Cause I
already
remember
written
you
it up.
changed it up.
Huh?
Oh, don't.
There's 40 multiple choice questions over all the topics. I had 80 questions, I cut it down to 40. You want 80?
No.
And then there are 2 case studies, which we're gonna do one case study together right now. Okay?
We're gonna do a case study.
We're gonna do a case study right now. Yeah. Maybe I'll do another one on Thursday. Okay? But this is just for you to get ready. The case studies will be either from the respiratory tract, the systemic infections, or the urogenital. Okay? I've got 2 versions. The morning class will get 1 version, and you all will get another version. Okay? And that's just because I've had people like talk like in the morning, like, it's gonna be Neisseria, you know, and then people know, and then they get
You said respiratory.
respiratory, systemic, or urogenital. Okay? So, let's do